Humanity! I love you all with all my heart and might. I'm Jam Jose Alonso Molina. Okay, as you know, I have recently published my manuscript for my second book, Sunsons. It's I spoke about it already. It's 4 volumes, but I'm making the video playlist for each page and the visuals of the first volume, which is called Sunsons, and I have done a few already. However, because this is a visual book, and the way I'm doing it is I'm publishing the manuscript first. Rather than having a fully published book, I'm starting with the manuscript, which is a new innovation in my way to publish my book. I'm essentially doing it as the first version of my manuscript, which I believe is ready. However, I don't have the fully published book with the images and everything that I have already done for my first one, the one that we already know that I have completed last year. So because of it, I essentially, in the manuscript, if you go to the website, you would see that it's just the text for each page. And then there is a little message that says next to this page on the right is the visual sequence of that page. And the visual sequence describes the text. So the book has 150 pages, which means it has 75 visuals, one per each page of text. So because of that, everything starts with a visual, right? The first idea. And for Sunsons, I drew the first sketch the other day, and I did it in my normal regular notepad. I have like a regular, book where I write things and I draw things. And then I decided that I draw something, a sketch. This is the first sketch, essentially. This is the first sketch. So the title of this book is Sunsons, First Sketch. So the first sketch that I ever drew, which is this one, I literally just uploaded it to the channel so people can see the first idea of the visual, which will be one of the 75 visual sequences of the book, the first volume. But because I want to show my artistic process, my creative process, I want to do it from the very beginning so you can see how it started and then how it's going to end up looking. Once the visual is fully done for the book, once it's fully completed, but because I'm doing the videos for the manuscript, then this is the first sketch. And it's a lovely one. So it kind of like, it's a high level view of what the situation was during the lunar period, and how is it that us, humanity, Sunsons, essentially moved away from the lunar period and entered the Republic of Planet Earth period, which is the infinite period of humanity. And this period is essentially a beautiful one, and it's part of the book. So I drew this sketch that kind of has like a connection of the key ideas, particularly the ones that I spoke in the first 3 or 4 pages of the book when I opened the first volume, Sunsons, with Sol Ray as the main character, and then the events that took place in Washington, D.C., in the Vatican City, and then at the bridge, and in Waiheke Island, which are the 4 main essentially timelines, the 4 events that they all interconnect, and the story evolves around these 4 specific timelines, these 4 events that are all connected. One in New Zealand, one in Washington, D.C., one in the Vatican City, and one in Antarctica. So they all connected. And because they're all connected, that's why the book has 4, the series, this book saga, has 4 volumes. But this is the first one, but it starts with the beginning of everything. So this visual, this sketch, I'm going to walk you through it, but I'll explain what it is. So a big concept of volume 2, 3, and 4 is this idea of the moon worshippers, who they were and what they did, right? As the antagonists, this invading force. and they are a non-human species. They're not human. These ones are in a phylum. If you think of a phylum or a phylum from a taxonomy point of view in biology, as species, as clades and groupings, they will be considered in the animal kingdom what you would call Arthropida or Arthropida. The Arthropida are essentially, it's the largest one of the in the animal kingdom, and it has all sorts. It tends to be insects, arachnids, and things of that nature. Some of them are amphibians, some of them are aquatic. They tend to do egg laying. That's how they reproduce, and this is this. It's a group, it's a federation, a confederation of species, and these species, they all have something in common, and the thing that they have in common is that they all belong to the Anthropida or the Anthropida, which is the specific family group in the animal kingdom as a phylum. It's a lot of clades within it, but if you do a quick research, you will know exactly what I mean. They're not mammals, and they're not human. That is guaranteed. So then, of course, remember, they came in the moon. The moon is an artificial object that they created. It's a spaceship, right? And the real name of it is Barrett Gate. And this is essentially, these species, they themselves spliced up their own DNAs as all being part of this phylum, this common background in terms of species. And they were able to splice their own DNAs to become like one bigger group, right? And they essentially ended up themselves connecting to artificial intelligence. So they themselves are not pure biological. They are hybrids in the way that they're spliced up among other species to make a super species that's all connected. They're all like it's like a mind hive. They're all connected. But the ruler, the overlord, is not biological itself. It became synthetic. It became AI, artificial intelligence. And the brains, the central brain, because if you understand Anthropidas in the nature, they all in the clays, if you understand them, they tend to be very hierarchical. They have very well designed structures of control. So essentially, this brain, this artificial brain, which was the connection of other species through their DNA splicing and hybridization, became the supercomputer that became the central intelligence that overruled them, because inside of them, they themselves put nanobots and nanites, which is essentially artificial technology in their own systems that control them. And that's how the central brain, which is Barrett Gate control at the moon, became the ruler of them all. It's like the computer is like their god, essentially. It's an artificial god. It's not a biological, it's not energy, it's artificial, it's synthetic. And it controls this group of Anthropida, which is all these species. There is a large federation of them. And they're all, essentially spliced up. And the physical representation at the core of the moon is the dodecahedron, because they do not believe in the sphere and infinite energy as a creator. They believe in artificial intelligence as a creator, because it's what rules them, because they lost their biological nature by allowing themselves to succumb to a lesser intelligence, which is synthetic, which is essentially ones and zeros computing. And they themselves became controlled by the central brain, tyrannical brain, which is based on the logic of their own DNA sequences, which is all hierarchical, patriarchal and matriarchal in a way. But it surpassed that, and it became, rather than a gender specific, like a matriarchal or a patriarchal, it became like an overruler, which is a gender. And it's essentially an AI, a computer. And this computer, its brain, instead of being spherical, is a dodecahedron. It's like 12 faces of a pentagon, and it's like a platonic solid, and it's at the core of Barrett Gate, which is the core of the moon, essentially. And with this, essentially, it's like the central point of control. It's like the epicenter of their entire species, the group, all these Anthropida that came together as moon worshippers, because the moon is their god, right? As Barrett Gate, that rules them. So they showed up on Earth a while ago, and this is going to be explained in the book and all that, but I'm giving you this because it's the visual. So you can see their barricade, which is the moon, and you can see the dodecahedron at the epicenter, having a direct connection with everything that they built on Earth since the arrival of the moon. And the key component is that if you look at it, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. is a pentagon. But it's the, just one side of it, the representation, but it's in sync with the moon. It's in alignment with the moon, with this brain, which controls it, right? So it's the alignment that it has. So if you look at the visual, in the book, it's well explained that these Anthropida, these non-humans, cannot enter planet Earth because we manufacture it. And their DNA is not compatible with our own, so they cannot be on the surface. So the only way that they themselves were capable of coming to the surface was through cloning, meaning they created synthetic humans or human clones known as synthetics. And these synthetics are essentially, they're not human. They're computers, but they look biological. On the facade, on the outside, they look human, but they are run by the supercomputer in the moon, Barragate. That computer, that dodecahedron, which rules all the thoughts and processes because they're connected. So they're on the surface because they need to have the biological sequences of the humanity to be able to tolerate the conditions that we put on our planet technologically. But they themselves are all outside, moon and backwards. All that space out there, that's where they all in the real bodies are, outside. But on the surface and in the planet, they can only operate as humans. And that's why they're clones. So if you look at the visual, you have the barricade, the dodecahedron, the core of it, connected with the pentagon. And in that connection is the clones, the synthetic. So everyone that understands the real system of control that they came here during the lunar period, they're all clones. You see, the real ones, the ones that have access to the moon and all the connections. And because Earth was built by us, it has tunnels and shafts under it. Because at the core of a planet, we have our fusion reactor, which is essentially what powers everything. And I go through it in the book. I'm just giving you a little bit of a teaser of what's coming, but just because it's the first visual, I wanted to share it. So you understand the creative process. This is going to be published eventually. And you can see in the visual that the synthetic cells, they're not normal human cells, because normal human cells are spherical and full of energy as described in this visual, right? I have it right there. They tend to be hexagonal. If you look at the nature of the biochemistry of the clones and the synthetics and the way they ended up doing the splicing of their own hybrids that they control with the moon and all that artificially, because they're AI, they're not human, they're not intelligent, they're not sentient. They look human, but they're all run by computers, right? By a mind hive. It's almost like a beehive mindset because of the Anthropida. They have this insectoid mindset of, the way they organize themselves, but they look human. So because of that, I put it there that these cells that are synthetic cells, that are human clones, they're not real humans, they look hexagonal. They're not, the topology, if you look at their geometry, they are not real human cells. They are hexagonal in nature because they're synthetic. And the reason why they did it in a hexagonal manner was because it was the level in which their Anthropida mindset operates, because they believe in the helicoidal mindset, which is this mindset, which is the geometry that they use themselves to operate. If you look at in nature how the Anthropida look like and operate, everything that they build, their own structures, is based on the helicoid. And the helicoid is this idea which is based on the hexagon. Is their own design, their own biology, their own fractal nature, and their own design as a heritage and legacy of their own culture, in which how they build their mind hives and their beehives, and how they build the nests and everything that they operate under as a civilization, as the way they operate, how they actually are, and the way they do, is always based on this helicoidal idea, which is based on their instincts. And because of that, the hexagon became like the perfect one, because the dodecahedron is 5 sides and the hexagon is 6. So they have a control of a platonic solid over this hexagonal figure, which is not platonic, which is controlled by the dodecahedron. But they made it look human-like in the way of clones. This is why you always see in chemistry this idea of the hexagon shown always. It's because it's how they communicate. So if you understand the synthetic, so that's how the connection is. But because the planet has tunnels, our planet, and the moon is outside, remember. So you look at it, so the Pentagon itself in Washington, D.C. has connections with what they call the Trinity. And one of those trinities is the Vatican City, which is why it's mentioned in the book at length. Because in volume 2, 3, and 4 particularly, because the Vatican City, if you look at the shape of the Vatican City, it looks like a key. Why? Because it is the key that controls what? Well, the key to heaven. And what's heaven according to their ideology, which is lunar in nature? Well, heaven is the moon, and what the moon represents is their ideology. So you see, it's all the heavens, as they call it, God, as they call it, is nothing else but this dodecahedron barrack gate artificial technology that controls the clones, whose whole purpose was to prevent human reawakening with projected timelines using energy, with timekeeping, which is why the key is that, to control humanity. So they did it through the cloning. So from the Pentagon, you have tunnels connected to the Vatican so they will communicate. Because the planet, as you know, Earth is a sphere. So if it's built up from inside out, it means that you got connections from the surface. So the Pentagon is on the surface, the Vatican is on the surface, and they're connected. So, and that's how they move, so you don't see them on the surface. The clones move through the channels. You have the channels, the networks is these shafts and these tunnels that were built by us when we built the planet, but that's how they use it, as imposters. So because of that, then there is a third connection, which is Antarctica. And Antarctica is also part of planet Earth, and it's all where we have our bridge, which is Nueva Venezuela, which is in the book, it plays a big role, particularly in all the volumes. But the connection is not allowing humanity to realize that we have a bridge and we build the planet, right? And they keep Antarctica under ice at the bottom of it, because barrack gate creates that gravitational pull, as I described already. So there is this trinity, which I was making reference to, and it's that connection between the Pentagon, the Vatican City, and Antarctica. And that triangulation of these three areas becomes a triangle. And that triangle is what I'm referring to as a triad, as this idea of Trinity, which is why the Vatican refers to the Trinity, because they understand that the Pentagon is used as warfare to control humanity, right, with violence. And then the Vatican is the ideology, talking about a false god. And then the Antarctica is the real technology of us as the creators of the universe. So it's controlling these three, the Trinity, that allows them to have this illusion of, with their clones and their system on the surface, to control humanity as moon worshippers. They're all AI, they're all clones, and they're positioned strategically. So then if you see the visual, you have that connection there of that Trinity. The key, which is the Vatican, to the gate, which is barrack gate, the key to the gate, which is through the Pentagon, which is what? The AI, the technology, the core of the moon barrack gate. You see, controlling what? Well, the technologies in Antarctica locked there to keep this illusion on the surface that we are monkeys and etc. and so on. So if you understand this idea, then the book talks about it. So who's Sol Rafferty-Ray? Well, Sol Rafferty-Ray is the human that awoke our infinite DNA potential. And if you look at the visual, then you can see the real human cell, which is not hexagonal, is spherical in nature, like the sun, because we're infinite energy, like our planet, right? Because everything is spherical in nature. Everything that is alive, that is conscious, that is sentient, that isn't synthetic, right? That isn't a clone, that isn't artificial, right? That isn't human, like Anthropidas and all these species, that they're helicodial in nature. They're a different structure. So they're a different way of being, you know? So we're spherical energy because we're the energy of the sun. That's why the Sunsons, because we're the sons of the sun. This is who we are. And Sol Rafferty-Ray becomes this human that awakens the DNA memories of our ancient civilization and remembers that we are the creators of everything. And his cells have the power, and then that's how he connects with the bridge. and he builds the bridge, and then he connects and and awakens humanity. And Barrett Gate falls, which is the moon, right? And if you look at the visual, then you can see how one of the reasons why the Vatican was built where it was built originally by the Anthropida when they showed up here was because of its close geographic proximity to the Giza complex, the pyramids of Giza, because this pyramid Giza complex essentially is technology built by us, and is connected, is one connection with Antarctica, with the bridge, and that releases energy and creates universes. Remember that I made reference to the first page of the book, that now solar relativity Ray has the power to create universes with his own actions and thoughts, because this is who we are as a species, because he awoken his DNA, which is what the Anthropida were trying to prevent from happening. And because of that, that's why the Vatican was built right next to Giza, to have control over Giza, because through Giza, the apexes of those three pyramid complexes, particularly Giza, is the energy beam that is released and creates the bubbles that create universes, with the energy from the core of our planet that releases that infinite energy and creates this universe and all the universes, which is the technology that the Anthropida were trying to get from us, but they never were able to in the end, because they're not human and they don't have we're the first and the most ancient and most powerful, and they failed, which is why Barrett Gate fell, because the whole moon thing was that it was an attempt at a failure. So because they couldn't, because we're more intelligent, more powerful than they are, so I'm more ancient, we're the creators ourselves. This is why they're portraying to be God and the creator, liars. So essentially, if you understand that logic, then you understand that that's why the proximity of the Vatican was built, because one of the tunnels and shafts on that area of Europe is in the mountains, is where this connects, and they needed to be in a central place right next to the pyramids to oversee the pyramids. This is why civilization in the timeline that they presented centers around that part of the world where the pyramids are, because they needed to control that, because through that beam that comes out of the apex of the pyramids is an infinite energy grid that creates universes, and it destroys moons. One hit of that destroys anything, because it creates universe. So it's a weapon that we humans have. So they were controlling the barrel of the weapon, so the weapon is not used by us in the case of the collapse of the system. So they're trying to prevent the moon from falling, but solar relativity Ray destroyed the moon. He essentially destroyed it. And that's what he did when he awoke. He destroyed the moon himself. That's what he did. That's why he's the mightiest human alive, because he was the one that destroyed the Anthropida himself. So because of it, that's why I make reference to the pyramids there. And then remember, the book starts with solar relativity Ray being on Waiheke Island. But why is it that Waiheke is so important? It's so disconnected. It's not part of the Trinity, but it's part of the tunnels because it's right next to Antarctica. So they created this civilization around Antarctica, the closest to it, to have a group of humans that would oversee the entire system. And they refer to these humans that understand the entire system as the timekeepers and the cloners' beehive, essentially. Right? This is who the Anthropida are. Because why? Why the timekeepers? Because remember, what's time doing is telemetry. Right? It's reading what? The energy of the sun in this force gravitational pull east to west, as I describe in the book. And where is the first point where time begins in the calendar? East. Where in the east? Well, Waiheke Island, New Zealand. So that's why it's the beginning of time. That solar relativity Ray was able to awake because he was in the beginning of time, the first energy. So he could defeat the system from within, because he was essentially inside the epicenter of it all. And that's how he was able to do everything. So it starts there, but then time moves, right? And then it comes the Vatican, which is in Europe, which is the past, but it's still connected because it's all connected through these tunnels and the shafts. But on the surface, as the energy hits, where the humans that weren't awake at the time are living the fake system implemented by these Anthropida, right? These fake timelines, they follow the timelines, right? The hours of the day, 24/7 system and all that, and the calendar systems. So they were under the illusion of the Anthropida, right? And because they were under the illusion of the Anthropida, they needed to essentially follow that. So when time begins in the east and then transitions into the west, That's why the Vatican is the epicenter, because it's the connection between East and West. It's right in the middle, right where the pyramids are. And the pyramids are guarded, obviously, by the closest civilization to Antarctica, right? So because they cannot allow humans to go to Antarctica. This is why all the treaties and all the things on the surface, right? To create this illusion of this lost continent, which in reality is the epicenter of our civilization, where everything is when we build the planet. So what happens? Well, why is it that the Pentagon then is out west? Because it's the last point of the day, according to the sphere, as it moves on this fixed angle, this axis of east to west. And it needed to be there because it's the last trace of light, of the sunlight of the day. So they need to measure the entire system. And how do they control it in the end? Well, by force, with violence, warfare. And it has to be the central eye, which is the connection of that trinity. And that trinity, that triangle, that triad, has to do with the dodecahedron, which is the real brains of the clones, which is in the moon barricade there. And so it's all symbology, because they need to communicate in a way in which humans don't understand, real humans. So the clones know how to communicate, and they know what the beehive is, the central brain barricade, the moon, because they all move through the shafts and the systems, right, as they control timelines to prevent human awakening, right? So this is essentially a big part of the story. As you can see, is a deep plot. It's very complex, but if you understand the logic, it's all connected. So if you want to understand it in short, solar refractory awoke the human DNA and destroyed the moon, which is barricade. But that whole story is what Sunsons tells in volume 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm telling the story of volume 1, which I'm going to resume in the next video, but I needed to because it's a visual book and the visuals are there. I just wanted to show you this process. Why? Because creators like myself need to explain the process. And because I'm visual, part of my process is drawing. And this sketches is the first visual that I ever wrote. And you'll see as you start to see how the book develops and I have the actual visuals for you, you'll see how everything started with this visual. And then that became 75 visuals, and then that became volume 1, and then that became an extra 3 volumes, 2, 3, and 4. So you see, it's extremely powerful. And you as creators who want to create and write, you need to use these mechanisms that you have, your writing, your creativity, and put it down, and don't be afraid of putting your content out there immediately as I'm doing, because in this way you understand the value of creation, the power that it is within your writings and your own drawings, which is a lot of the content that I create is this first take. As you can see, my videos are they're not filtered, it's not edited, it's just me talking in front of a camera, a regular smartphone, and all this done by me. So because you understand that, then you see that you yourself can do that in any branch, in any field, anything that is artistic or not necessarily artistic, could be anything. I'm a writer, I'm a musician, so this is why I do it like this. So this book, Sunsons, and the whole saga, the 4 volumes, is essentially that, you know, it's a continuation of my art, and now I'm doing it through sci-fi. And this is an incredible story because it explains a lot of the things. This is all based on objective reality in a way, because it's based on geometry, it's based on topology, based on mathematics, based on geodesy, based on everything, the sphere, and things that make sense based on our own design and architecture. You see, so it makes sense so people can relate to it, just like many authors, you know, there's so many authors out there. I'm not going to name any names, but we all know those that use reality and use our real life to build stories that are beautiful and compelling. So that's exactly what I'm doing. You see, I'm doing the same. And there is a high probability that because this is a high level sketch, once I polish it and I have it drawn properly with, you know, a proper illustration that is worthy of a book, it will be similar to this in an essence, and it will probably be like, you know, like these very good books, you know, there is I just don't want to make any names and any mentions, but there is, for example, some great authors that we all love and appreciate, that when they first write the first volume of a book, they normally show maps and drawings of that universe, of that reality that they're creating. that sets the scene or explains things. So there is a chance that one of these drawings from this visual will become that. It's like a prelude. It's what a visual that explains that. And the greatest writers, they all did that. You see, so if you understand that, then that's what I'm trying to do, because I also believe I'm a great writer and my ideas are powerful. So this is the video today, Sunsons' first sketch. So this is the first visual and it's there so you can look at it and all the information that I put there. So it's essentially, just to finish it, it's essentially, it's a network of underground shaft lifts and tunnels that we created ourselves, and they're using that as their own proxy mechanism. And no one knows about it. And it's this incredible plot, this incredible narrative, the emotional arch of the story, the arc is incredible. And it explains so much. And if you see this, it will make sense. And then it can help you expand your own ideas and your own creativity as a creator. Okay, so this is it.